Hi, good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining the session. We're going to be spending the next couple of minutes together, and I'm going to share with you how we're building meaningful relationships with our users here at Adidas Runtastic. So with that, I would say we get right into it. It allows me to, there we go. So quickly about today, this is our plan. I'm going to share with you our vision, where we're coming from, and then we will go right into the topic of retention rate optimization. So building up on the talk that I did last year already at the App Promotion Summit, we're going to be talking about the different steps of retention rate optimization. And after that, we're going to get into action. So I'm going to be telling you a bit about what we did recently and also what the outcome of it was. And then we're going to be ending the session with a little wrap up and some takeaways for you. And before we get into it, I would have loved if at least this year we would have met in person, but it is not possible. So I'm just quickly going to share a bit with you who I am and where I come from. So my name is Anja. I am working at Adidas Runtastic for more than 4 years already. And I'm currently leading product marketing for the Adidas training app. As you can see, I'm streaming live from home. The background is a bit different to last year. I'm in home office for more than a year now, so I actually have my real home office space right now. And one thing that I started with the pandemic is that I actually learn hand lettering at the moment. So it is quite tough to get away from the screen and to just do things because nothing's really possible. I guess that's a given for most of us. So that's my latest project that I started. And fitting to the company that I work for, I'm a total sneakerhead. So there's definitely a constant stream of new sneakers coming in for me. And with that, I would say we get right into the topic and kicking it off with our vision. So we truly believe that through sport, we have the power to change lives by engaging and empowering 1 billion connected athletes. And this is also the vision that we're sharing with Adidas. So Adidas and Adidas Runtastic are united by this one shared vision. And we truly believe that we have this power of changing lives. But we also know that we can't really change lives through sport unless we actually get people into sport. And this is exactly where our sports apps are coming in. So our focus with the Adidas Running and the Adidas Training app is really to motivate and get people into sport, but also keep them in sport. And this sets us up in a very unique way compared to others, because our main focus is not revenue generation, but engaging our users and having an impact on their life and making sure that they become more active and help them stay active and form that routine that transforms their life. And with this, I'm leaning over to the topic that I'm going to be talking about today. And as you can imagine, if engagement and keeping our users with us is that important to us, retention rate optimization is a cornerstone of our work that we're doing. And this is exactly what today's topic is going to be. So kicking it off with the impact that we had over the past 2 years. So last year, I just showed the first part of that graph, and we continued to optimize our user retention. So we have actually seen a 230% growth in our user retention. And we are doing this by really bundling our optimization efforts when it comes to user retention across multiple teams. And it really transformed the way we work and also the impact that we can generate with this, because everyone is working on the same topic, on the same goal from different angles, which then leads us to having a way bigger impact compared to if each and everyone would be cooking their own soup. And with that, I'm going to reiterate on something that I'm usually saying when I do talks like this one, and it is that it's really important to take retention rate optimization step by step. That's my firm belief that one cannot focus on a very late retention rate if the early retention metrics are not where they should be. So this was also something that we've always been doing. starting out with the short-term retention focus and really checking, hey, is this where we want it to be, or can we tweak it here and there a bit and get even more out of it? And then going into midterm and long-term retention rate optimization. So we ensure that we're really taking all of our users with us and we're not losing some of them along the way, just because we're actually jumping 2-3 steps ahead of where we should actually focus on. By doing so, we had our proxy metrics in place. So for some of you who might recall what I was talking about last year, and we continuously optimized, and it worked fine. But at some point, there was a point where our exponential growth actually started to flatten out a bit. And this was when I started to do some research, and I found a very interesting article of the former VP of Growth at Instagram. And in this article, he said that they were growing linearly, not exponentially. Their insight was that it is critical for growth teams to be continually defining who the adjacent user is, to understand why they're struggling, to build empathy for the adjacent user, and ultimately to solve their problems. Who he's referring to with the adjacent user is the users who are not successful within your product. And I'm going to get back to this a bit later on when we're going to have a deeper look into what the adjacent user theory is and how we then also applied it to the Adidas training app. So as mentioned in the beginning, and that's also no secret, retention rate optimization starts with a flawless core experience. And that was also our focus. Like, we needed to make sure that our core user experience is just top notch and there's nothing to complain about for our users. And to do so, we focused on the optimal user flow first. So that's when our data scientists came in and supported us with what we call the retention model. It's a machine learning algorithm that actually allows us to divide users into different groups depending on the hypothesis that we have, and then we can see what the successful users are doing compared to the non-successful users, or the positive and negative users compared to how we wanna classify them. And with that, we really were able to just find that perfect or optimal user flow and really optimize for it. So we knew exactly what a user needs to do in a certain amount of time, and we just went for it. And that was all purely based on quantitative data. And when at some point we realized, well, that growth is kind of like flattening out, but we still think we have some further potential to optimize on, we started to ask ourselves, well, what could be the next thing? And this was when we decided to apply the adjacent user theory and start to learn from our non-successful users. So I would love to be sitting here and telling you we have 100% retention rates. We don't. Of course, there will always be some users who are struggling and who are not making it there. And if anybody has that magic number of 100% retention rate, not just on day 0, but afterwards, please let me know. I would love to hear how that works. So focusing on the ideal path for us meant we usually start looking at the user with the sign up. So we have a mandatory registration within our app. And this is basically like the entry point for the user, where we need to make sure that we get the data that we need to create the account. And on the other hand, also get the user onboarded so that they're ready to use the app. And then the next step is that we need to get them activated. So for us, that's the first activity that is done for a user. And this means that the user is actually experiencing the core value proposition of our app for the very first time. And moving on, we also want to get them next into a casually engaged state. And our casually engaged users need to do minimum 2 activities in the first 14 days, because that's for us a proxy to retention on the long run. So with that, we can really focus on the first 14 days, optimize there, and know when we get users to do that, they are significantly more likely to stay with us in the long run. And next up, and this is what we've newly developed in the past few months, is for our core engaged users and how we can classify them. So that's another data product that our data scientists did for us. We call it the Runtastic Attribution model. And it's basically splitting all our users up in different attribution model segments. And for each of those segments, we can then say which features the users are interacting with, and also which features they're using compared to different segment that can change month over month. So we can, of course, rerun that analysis as often as we want to. We can also see how users are floating between the different segments that we're having. So that really allows us to then also take the next step after we have the users do 2 activities in the first 14 days that we know, okay, what do we need to get those users into the segments where we want to have them, and also how are the behaviors of the segments changing over time depending on new features that we're releasing or new messaging that we're throwing out there. So can be a lot of different reasons. And this is kind of the ideal path derived from the data, from quantitative insights that we're focusing on. And now we come to the main focus of today's presentation, which is the focus on the adjacent user and how we started to learn from them. So you can see again on the slide our ideal path and user flow that we have within the app. And users are making it from one stage to the other, but some of them are also dropping out at a certain stage. So the ones who are making it to the next stage, we call them the successful users, and those who are dropping out at any stage, we call them the adjacent user. Because it is unfortunately the case that not every user is successful. So no matter how much we optimize and how satisfied we are with our retention rates, we still have users who are not making it there. And our aim is to satisfy as many of our users as we can. So we need to continuously gather feedback from them so that we don't just optimize on the ideal path, but also make sure that we know what they're struggling with. And then we can actually tackle those obstacles and remove it for them so that the new users who are coming in won't be even facing them anymore. So with this, we're going now a bit into the hands-on part of this presentation. So on the right-hand side, you can see how the funnel looks like for us in a very simplified way. So we're throwing in the new users that we're acquiring through paid and organic user acquisition. And then we want them to come out as successful users. And if they don't make it there, they are adjacent users for us because they're still spinning in this part that they didn't make it to a certain stage. So for us, our messaging journeys were always designed to guide our users to experience and form a habit around the core value proposition. And when we realized that, well, we're not there, we don't have a retention rate of 100%, so there are some struggling, we decided we're going to ask them and we're going to implement the survey into the messaging journey to continuously learn from our adjacent users. So if you think of our onboarding messaging journey, it has the goal to get our users activated. And once they're activated, they're actually moving on to the next messaging journey. And for those who are fine and who are successful and who are making it there, they will just drop out of our onboarding messaging journey and will receive other messaging that helps them to get casually engaged and then core engaged. And for those users who are not making it there, they will just never drop out of the onboarding messaging journey, but nonetheless, we cannot message them forever. That wouldn't work. So we decided that we are focusing on the first 14 days of the user after the registration. And when the user is not successful after that time, we said, okay, we admit we didn't make it for that user specifically, and we're just going to ask them if they would be so kind to actually give us feedback so we can learn from them and then we can improve the experience. And how we did this was a cool project and collaboration between product marketing, so the growth squad that we have here at Runtastic, and our product design team. And we started out with research questions, that are focusing on the 3 pillars of internal factors. So they're related to the app, external factors, and communication. So communication is everything we're doing from a marketing messaging perspective in that case. And the second step was that we created the survey based on the research questions. So we knew what we want to get out of it, so which insights we will need, and then we started to formulate questions. And our guiding principle was that we need to keep it short and simple. We knew that those were the users who were not successful, so they were on the edge of dropping out from the app. If we would send them a 50-question questionnaire, they probably would never even have a look at it. So we have 4 main questions to better understand the adjacent user in there, and the option to recruit users for our product design team, because they're constantly doing not just quantitative but also qualitative research, where they're conducting user interviews, and they are always seeking for new users to actually join that group, so they can ask them for the interviews whenever there's something they actually want to ask them and where they need feedback on. So if a user is willing to do that, there will be a few more questions popping up just so we can contact them afterwards and get that information. And the third step was that we actually did and continuously do the analysis. We did the first analysis 1.5 months after we launched the adjacent user survey, as we call it. And now we're doing it on a monthly basis. So we always get the latest responses, and that informs our planning across multiple cross-functional teams. So we really make sure that those responses are considered, that we learn from them, and that we see how we can incorporate that into our planning and into our processes, and what needs to change in order to better support our users when they are with us. And here's just a bit of an outcome, so that you can see how it looks like. We were asking our users what kept them from working out, and as you can see, so for example, their schedule is too busy, so we might just want to remind them, or there's a lack of motivation. So this is something we can consider again for our feature development, and how can we make sure that our users are more motivated. So there's really a bunch of insights in there, and with some of the users we can even follow up. So what we did in terms of the sendout was we created a batch sendout where we just created one big segment of users who classified as an adjacent user for the past half of a year before the sendout. And on top, we then integrated it into our messaging journey. So whenever a new user who signed up and is not successful ever since we launched the adjacent user survey, they will automatically get it, and we continuously get more insights. So we gathered, or with the first sendout, more than 5,000 responses from users, and we also recruited quite a bunch of users for our qualitative interviews. So that's also a big plus for the product design team, that they have more users to address for the research topics that they have. And with this, we're already getting to the end of it, and summing it up with some main takeaways. So the first one is take retention rate optimization step by step. So focus on short-term retention in the beginning, and then move on gradually to ensure you're taking all the users with you, and don't miss out on any important steps or obstacles that they're facing and that are still there. The second point is, to sum it up, focus on the ideal path and make it flawless, and then start to focus on the adjacent user. So really starting with the core experience, but also consider that the feedback that the adjacent users are giving you are informing your core experience. So it's just 2 different angles from which you're looking at the topic. One is really the quantitative data insights, and the other one is the qualitative user insights. And if you merge them together, it's even more powerful than just focusing on one or the other exclusively. And once you have identified your adjacent users, start talking to them, start learning from them, and make sure that the insights that you get are not just gathered for the sake of gathering insights, but really inform your planning and the actions of your cross-functional teams. It doesn't really matter if it's product design, if it's marketing, or in our case, the growth team. There's really something in it for everyone that can be taken out of it and can be applied to improve the experiences for the users. And last but not least, the adjacent user theory is something that has really transformed the way that we are gathering feedback from our users and how we're seeing retention rate optimization. And this is why I also wanted to share the article with you. So if you scan the little QR code on the bottom, then you will get directly to the article, and you can read up on what the ex-VP of Growth of Instagram is actually saying on the adjacent user, and can also read up on it if you want to apply it to your business and your use case. And with that, we're already at the end of the presentation. Thanks so much for joining and listening in. And I think we do have some time left for questions now, if I'm not mistaken.
Hi, Anya. Great. Do you want to stop sharing your screen and we'll do a couple of questions?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, that was very impressive again that you're still growing. Do you think you're going to, you've reached a kind of point now where you've got to do something radical to get any further changes, or are you going to continue down this path and further optimize?
To be honest, so we still get really valuable feedback from our users, and as long as that's the case and we can still derive actions for our product and for our marketing communication from it, I believe we're going to continue that way. We're of course also doing research, and we're trying to find other ways to improve retention rates. That's of course a given, but yeah, still very much also looking into that feedback, and we're still able to derive pretty cool action items from that.
Great. Okay, let's do a couple of questions. We've got Old. Good to see you, Old. Similar to Yannick, what channel did you use to share this survey with users? Email or push plus in-app? Have you seen any difference between users who do not work out but are active within your app and users who are not active at all?
Yeah, so we used email. We were thinking about it quite a bit, if we should use push or email, but we then decided that we can just give a better context if we use email. So the majority of our messaging journey relies on push messages and in-app messages, and for us, in-app messages can be the regular in-app messages or inline in-app messages, so that's a combination. And we then just said, like, it makes more sense to use email, and it works really well. So we are giving them some time after the last push that we send, where we're trying to activate them once more. Then we leave them alone for 3 days, and then we send the survey and ask for them if they could really just take a few minutes of time and take the survey. And so far, the response rate is actually really cool. And we're super satisfied with it because it's the first time we did something like this. So we also didn't know how willing users would be to actually respond to it, but I'm very happy with the rates that we're seeing there at the moment.
Great. And Andrew is asking, what are the main differences you see in approaches to retention strategy between freemium users and paid subscribing users, if any?
So for us, premium is an add-on, but not a must-have in the app. So you can definitely unlock a premium experience if you purchase the premium product, but you can also use the app as a basic user. So what we see is that premium users have a slightly higher potential for long-term retention. So there's definitely a correlation that we can see there. But when it comes to the features they're using or the interactions, more, we're not so much looking into features specifically, but more the interactions users are having within our app. We don't really see a big difference. So there's not a significant difference in the duration of the workouts or so. We just know that in general, our users are actually pretty drawn to training plans. And that's also a vehicle for retention again, but not really any major or significant differences that we can see.
Great. Okay, we've made a bit of a bodge with the timings here, and we should have had another 5 minutes, but unfortunately we cut it a bit fine. But what I suggest is, would it be okay to go into the chat and pick up? There's a couple of questions, one from Bilal that we haven't managed to cover in person. Would that be okay?
Of course, happy to
Great.
follow there.
Okay, Behlul's just great. So that's the good news. We're going to be able to pick them up in the chat. So yeah, I want to say a big thank you again to Anya for taking part. And I hope we can see you potentially in Berlin in person in December. If not, let's make it third time lucky and London for 2022.
That would be lovely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.